So President Trump says he will probably meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy while attending the NATO summit. That's how he phrased it to reporters on Air Force One. This morning, a Ukrainian parliament member shared her thoughts with CBS News on what the leaders should discuss.
I believe that it will be likely that President Zelenskyy might raise an issue that the strategy of so-called friendly conversations with Putin are less efficient than the strategy of strengthen. After all, it was President Trump's position that the US foreign policy should be leading with peace through strength. And thirdly, I believe that over the past few months, Russia has systematically failed to uphold their commitments. After all long conversation with Trump, Putin promised one thing, but did the opposite. So to me, it appears as a sign of disrespect.
All right, let's bring in Bruen, former diplomat and president of the Global Situation Room, joining us live now from The Hague. Brett, thanks so much. So first things first, let's start with Ukraine and Russia. What do we expect the president to say to Zelenskyy if and when they do meet?
Well, look, I think Trump is going to try to pressure Zelenskyy again, make concessions, give me an easy peace deal. Zelenskyy is going to turn the tables on Trump and say, hey, you went to bat for Israel. You declared that peace was the priority and that the defense of a democracy like Israel was key. So why not here? Why not in Europe? And Trump is going to have a whole lot of NATO allies asking questions, hard questions, about why, for instance, they didn't get a heads up when Trump was going to launch these attacks, which not only put Americans in danger, it put a lot of our allies, troops, business interests in danger as well.
You know, you actually talked and posted on X. If we turn to Middle East right now, you posted on X about the need for actually monitoring mechanisms for the ceasefire between Iran and Israel. So let's talk about that in terms of a plan forward.
Yeah, so the problem with Trump's, hey, I talked to Netanyahu, the Qataris talked to the Iranians, and we're going to call it a ceasefire deal and let peace reign across the Middle East, isn't actually how this kind of diplomacy works. You have to have someone or some mechanism to monitor it. Who gets to say what is a violation? None of that was spelled out. And then on top of that, just like with Gaza, you want to have milestones. You want to have some level of confidence building measures. None of that is in place. And then last, where are we headed? Is this, ultimately, because a ceasefire is nothing more than a pause. So what is the objective here? And I think those are flaws, and that's why his, attempt at peace has been floundering in the Middle East.
So what are your concerns about the risks that could come from Tehran in the coming days?
Well, one, bear in mind that what we saw last night was performative. The Iranians, yes, wanted to show that they were striking back, but that isn't necessarily the real threat. The real threat that Iran has is what we used to call in the Situation Room asymmetric attacks. And those could come from sleeper cells. They could come from the cyberspace. It could come from attacks on Americans and American interests overseas. And I have not heard enough emphasis about that from the Trump administration, because as an American overseas, I would say that is my top worry right now, whether it's on the streets here in Europe, whether it's online or elsewhere. How would Iran try to retaliate in ways that could hurt American interests?
Now, our allies also worried about President Trump's lack of coordination and communication surrounding the conflict. So what are you hearing in regards to the communication?
Yeah, look, here at the NATO summit, there was a lot of talk in the hallways about how this was a unilateral effort and that, Trump continues to shoot from the hip. And that's fine once, but if, this becomes a pattern, if we essentially, whether it's with Russia and Ukraine, whether it's with China or other adversaries, Trump is just doing this sort of cowboy-esque, Wild West approach to the world, that is going to cause serious security risks for our allies. So he's going to hear a lot about that over the next 24 hours. Does it sink in? That's still an open question. But I do think on top of that, and what we have heard from a number of countries is, when Trump is talking about for instance, trying to apply more pressure on the Iranians. He needs our allies' help. And the fact that he's slapped so many tariffs, imposed so many threats on a lot of those close allies does not, lead them to want to come to his aid in these situations.
All right, Brett Bruen. Brett, thank you so much.